being a data scientist in industry, I moved to development sector where I was a teacher, a school teacher, as part of Teach for India Fellowship, and then worked in education policy for long enough to realize that space is maturing very, very fast. This was also the time when we were seeing very interesting development in the tech side of things, where transformers were available for in the form of GPTs. 2019 GPT-2 came out, which is something that I got my hands on very early on, and it was a very interesting experience, which also helped me see this intersection between fields which has really large amount of text data and how the algorithms are making it better to perform certain tasks in these spaces, which led me to again look for a particular role. Agami was very kind to give me a role in data with justice, where I worked in building OpenNyAI initiative to a certain level, and where we also did a lot of model building, training exercises, data collection exercises with a lot of students. And we also built Jugalbandi at that point in time, which is something that probably a lot of you are familiar with. And last year I had started my own for-profit company, which got acquired by Sarvam. And now here I am building legal tech in a for-profit manner for India and for the world. So that's my introduction. I am not a lawyer by education, but if you ask me about ICDR rules, I'll probably be able to tell you that the limit is 18 months, not 3 years, in case you are confused about the promoters and the shares that they get. But that's a little bit about me. Atreya, how do we go about it?
You can directly, yeah, we can jump in.
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, thank you so much for joining this call. I can see 54 people, which is a lot of people to be talking to. First of all, congratulations to anyone who is building in legal space in India in terms of using technology to solve any of the problems. To put it in perspective, we are trying to solve for 1/5 of the world. So it's not a small problem. We are also trying to solve for a problem at a cost point which is probably going to be an envy for the entire world if we are able to crack those things. And it's just generally very hard to build in India in terms of legal tech. So if you are one of those people who are building in legal tech in India, I mean, like, my appreciation and a lot of respect for all of us, right? So without wasting too much time, I'm very excited to share about A1, which is something that I and my team obsesses over day in and day out. But before I go a little deep onto it, have you guys used A1, interacted with it in any capacity? If some of you can just put a +1 or something of that sort in the comment, that will mean a lot. If any of you have. Okay, so there are a few people who have. Okay, thank you, Shruti. You have also looked at A1, right? So the next 1 hour, at least how I see we should be spending time on, is I'll just give you a good sense of how did we build A1. I am also going to be aware about some of the things that I can't share in this forum. But what at least like I'm confident you will take away from this is like, how are we doing it differently from other players who are trying to build into the similar space. And then we will keep it very, very short so that there's more chance for people to be asking questions. And then that is probably a good opportunity to, get into a little bit more of depth in terms of how A1 does what it does. So A1 is, so before I start, let me just give you a short background on what Sarvam AI is, what do we do, right? So we are a deep tech startup based out of India, which basically means we talk about models, we talk about GPUs, and we talk about inferencing quite a lot in our day. We are a team of like engineers. So most of the company is actually engineers who are building a lot of this stuff. How we at least visualize it is that in your AI stack, you have GPUs, which are silicon, right? And everything above silicon is what we are focused on. So we are focused on how are the models put into the GPUs for inferencing. How can we make these models and these GPUs in a sovereign manner so that you have no dependency on to the external world when you are using some of these systems inside, right? So sovereign AI is very, very core to our work. And then I have also mentioned this population scale, right? As a company, our mission is to impact the lives of 1 billion plus people through the use of AI. So as a company, we do a lot of things, which if some of you have been following what we did during launch, right? We build foundational models, we build specialized models for conversational AI use cases. And then we have a workbench called the Legal Workbench, which is more angled towards lawyers, modern day lawyers, right? Uh, and uh, uh, and this is just at a very large level what we do, right? Like, so we look at GPU inferencing stack, we look at models, we look at the application layer, and at the application layer we do a few interesting things. For example, we build something called agents. Now the current product is our attempt at capturing how AI will assist in the legal work. So I think when we started working, and I think this has also been a conversation for long enough in this space, right? Where how will AI really impact the work is a open question, and I'm pretty sure like people will have their imagination just like we do. And it is still something that we have to see, right? Like, what does it mean to be using your AI in your day-to-day work 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line? I don't think we have answers to those questions, but if we were to visualize, this is what we would imagine. So let me just quickly play this video. I think this video is a lot of fun, so I'm just going to take the liberty of playing this video. But as you see this video, also see like how we see a bunch of these things being integrated into a lawyer's work. Are you able to hear the audio?
Yes.
Okay, awesome.
Let's get this done.
Cool. So as you can see, instead of taking a vertical approach where we go after one problem in the legal space, right? Like, which is a lot of, which is a very common strategy with a lot of players, right? Like, because traditionally contract lifecycle management and legal research have been like two major islands for, the legal technology work to happen in some sense. We took a different view. We basically asked ourselves this question, right? Like, a lawyer, doesn't matter where this person is sitting, right? Like, be it in a bank or in a in-house scenario or in a law firm, right? What are the different things that this lawyer does, and what are the different exoskeletons that this lawyer would need? And then we try to sort of bring it all together for this lawyer, right? So in our mind, the problem statement before how can organizations become 1000x or 10,000x more effective, the question that we went after was how can lawyers become 1000x more effective, right? And there's a lot of for the lack of better word, right? Like, there's a lot of drudgery and a grunt work that goes into doing the legal work, right? Like, so the grunt is almost like a prerequisite for you to apply legal mind, right? If someone has not really done the pre-processing, right, like you would be, so for example, like our research agent would be reading at like 60,000 words per minute, kind of per second, kind of actually per minute kind of a speed, right? Like, and one would say like, can it go faster? Of course it can go faster, right? But it is making all of these different decisions in the meantime to pre-process information well enough so that when a lawyer receives it, they can actually do the application of legal mind in some sense, right? There is no application of legal mind when you are comparing to documents just getting something redlined, right? But just these tools were not effective enough, and that's why inevitably lawyer ends up spending time on some of these activities, which we believe now the technology is at a level where we can start assisting in some of these tasks, right? Now, what we thought about in terms of the primitives of a legal task are three things, right? And obviously, like, by no means this is an exhaustive list of things that we do, but these are things that we chose to focus on. We chose to focus on search. So lawyers inevitably would not want to get their responses informed by some of the blogs, right? Like, even if it is Tax Guru, which is giving you some information, you would probably still want to read certain regulations, certain rules, and the whole search basically goes into that part, right? So if I were to paint a picture, right, like imagine a person who is sitting in a firm who is in an advisory practice, right? And it's now a client has come back to this person asking for certain advice, right? This person would usually give up like a lot of questions that they want answer to, right? And what it means is that this lawyer's job is now to exhaust all the information to ensure that everything is covered, right? This eventually would translate into some of the biases, right? Like, and biases in terms of how you are designing systems. So is your system designed to retrieve just the top certain parts of the documents and then respond to it, or is your system designed to basically identify everything, fetch from it, do certain things, and then give it? So exhaustiveness, both in terms of the data availability as well as data pre-processing, becomes a challenge in search, right? Similarly, when we look at the drafting problem, and I think contract lifecycle management solutions have done a great job of doing it, but the friction really that is there is more technological. So for example, today, all the document automation tools to a certain extent, unless until you're using pure GPTs, would require you to write a document as a template. And those templates are something that is modified. And God forbid if the modification that is required or the template is like slightly more sophisticated than an NDA or an employment form or a contract, right? Inevitably, the word processor is a junior lawyer, right? Like, who is asked to sort of make all of these changes for someone to apply their legal mind to say whether this deal structure works well or not. Is this something which will become a point of contention or not, and those kind of things, right? Similarly, one of the common things that we saw is people are inevitably sending NDAs, getting back modified NDAs. They're sending contracts, they're getting some comments, and all of those things, right? And now all the organizations have their own policies and rule books around these things, right? How do we make it easy for a lawyer to actually know the difference between two documents and understand it well enough, right? Those are some of the challenges that we went after in drafting. And analysis is like something which is still in the wraps, but something that where what we believe is that eventually a lot of work that lawyers do, right? Like, so lawyers will do like analysis work, for example. Are the compliances related to outsourcing that is laid down by both RBI and SEBI? So there are multiple regulators who are involved in this, right? Like, are all the requirements satisfied or not, right? And for that, now, if you imagine, it is a composite task of doing search, doing analysis, looking at the company internal documents, and then arrive at a particular decision. In software 2.0 world, you would have to probably create workflows of each of them and then arrive at something. But with generative AI, we have the power of flexibility, right? And that's why in future, I think a lot of lawyers are going to move from doing things from ground up to a lot of review, high quality review. And that might become one of the things that lawyers become really good at, right? Like, their mastery of information, there's mastery of practice comes from the fact that they do very high quality review, just like how auditors do that, right? So those are some of the interesting trends that we are seeing and interesting behaviors that we are observing. So the way the A1 is built, right? Like, A1 is a multi-agent system. It's an ensemble of multi-agent systems. So it's not one agent which is doing one task and that kind of a scenario. We look at entire pipeline of how things are deployed, and then we build agents wherever necessary. And then there are agents which are talking to these agents to get certain tasks done, right? For example, when we think about document pre-processing, right, we realized a lot of time is actually spent by people, especially in M&A scenarios, or people who are dealing with privacy laws, or people who have to share privileged information with other party, where they don't want certain pieces of information to be shared. For example, if you're undergoing an IT compliance, right, you might want to share one of your internal documents that proves that you do your security audits well enough. But again, you don't want to give away your server names, you don't want to give away your IP addresses and things like that, right? Redaction tool actually makes it much, much easier. So if you have hundreds of pages that you want to redact, redaction tool would directly help you with that, right? But in our mental model, we think about document pre-processing and think about what is the need there and then go from there. Similarly, for extraction, for parsing, we have our own agents which are working on these problems, right? Like to do very high quality, both data digitization as well as data verification to ensure that it is accurate or not, right? Now, legal research, document processing, right? Like, so in case of legal research, there are two things on A1. And by the way, if you guys, one interesting anecdote that I can tell you is that all engineer team that we have here, right? One of their favorite pastime is actually to read Supreme Court judgments, and it has become interesting largely because we have a system where you have these notifications coming from a number of different regulators, right? So one of the things that we were actually this Omkar retailers is one of the interesting judgments that we came across, and we have discussed this very deeply inside the company, which has nothing to do with the work that we do. But we really enjoy that, because now instead of getting a document that you are chatting, that you are reading, right? Now you can actually like interact with it, and you can ask like very interesting questions. For example, what was the key issue in this case, right? Because you have a layer of a system that can read this document, can assist you. What you would essentially have is you would have like not just a great summary, and by the way, it works with any arbitrary length document, right? So not just that, but a lot of people who have problem with respect to that, it's AI generated, it's not trustworthy, right? Like first, you will not be able to copy it because we have made it hard so that you can't directly put it into one of your drafts. But the second thing is like, it just is a great reading assistance, right? For example, you click on one of the citations, it will go to that particular location, it will highlight the portion that you want to really read, right? And how I have seen at least like people use it is that, let me just first get a sense of this document before diving deep into the details of it, right? And this is like reading from the top instead of like going after like bits by bits by bits and stitching information to make the holistic sense. You get some holistic idea and then you verify it using hypothesis through that entire document. Now you have traceability. So anyway, so we believe that so one of the things that has come out of this, for example, right, like an unintended outcome of this is that now a lot of people are going to be able to engage with these systems, right? Suddenly it has not become suddenly it has become very easy for engineers to start reading judgments, for that matter, right? Like and we are interested. It's not that we are not interested. And the problem of legal is not that of literacy. The problem of legal is that of a comprehension, right? And just the fact that someone is able to explain it to me in like simpler language makes a sea difference with respect to how I engage with like the legal space itself. Also, there's a small button which helps you collapse in case any of you start using it and then you wonder how this thing works, right? So coming back to this thing, right? Like we have is it on cloud? I'll answer all of those questions. Please continue to put it in there and I'll answer all of these questions, right? You also have something called research memo. Now, research memo is our AI agent, which is handcrafted to do legal research with very, very high fidelity, right? And don't take my word for it. Go ahead and try it out. It is designed to not give you information that we have not really curated, right? So the challenge that we at least saw with a lot of other systems is that there is a scope leak, or there is a poisoning of responses you get if you start relying heavily on the web data, right? Specifically because if you do not control where your information is coming from, you would be informed by something. And these are the limitations of GenAI. GenAI does not probably know what is the reality of the world, the truth of the world as of today. But if given sufficient amount of information and context, right, they can do a very, very good job of certain tasks, right? So fundamentally, LLMs are constrained by the context that they have. And by providing it with very high quality data from source, which we collect ourselves, we are able to provide that kind of a stuff. So for example, if you are trying to generate a compliance list related to outsourcing by SEBI and RBI, right, you could ask it, it will give you the information, it will do inline citations. Not just that, it will also give you a small summary of tables, and it will give you all the authentic sources, which again, you can click on chat with citations, and it will open up a session where now you can just chat with these documents instead of going somewhere else. So all of these different small problems, which are a barrier for a lawyer to start engaging with these systems, right? Like, which is access to all the data that is available, and I can very confidently tell you, related to all the regulators that is listed, that you get as a notification, both over email and the system, right? We have done a historical pull, so we have all the data that exists on these systems and more. And there are a lot of interesting behaviors that we are seeing, both in terms of how regulators sort of like upload information, how do they make it easier for people to access this information and everything. And the other good advantage that you get is you also get like this confidence score, which basically tells you whether the LLM thought the information that is the answer finally given by the system, is it reliable or not, or to what degree is it reliable. If it is 5 on 5, then you would not have a problem, and you can rely on the response to fair certainty. If there is some sort of a discrepancy, for example, if you do not have explicit mention of certain things, right, in the document, which happens quite a lot when you're doing legal research, right, it will come and it will tell you that it is not there, and the confidence also will go down in some sense, right? So we are trying to build enough information around an AI response so that a user is able to discriminate it from a human response, as well as there is enough verifiability that in case someone wanted to, drill deep into it, they can do it. But very honestly, the first level of the problem, which is just knowing what to read, that universe in some sense is solved for, and that is available in the authentic sources for you. By the way, you guys don't need a enterprise account. You can just use your Google login IDs and start using A1 right away. I can post a link also there, right? So coming back to this system, right? Like, I hope you got a sense of like how we are doing some of these things in terms of document processing. There's a lot of other abilities that we have on A1. For example, we have auto draft ability, which allows us to draft really long documents. And this is a holy grail problem in terms of document automation, because what you could be doing, which you can't do in any of the existing document automation tool, is that you can take one of your existing document drafts and you can put it into this, and you can ask for the AI to make modifications, and it will do it. And the way it will do it is also very interesting. Not just that it will go ahead and make those changes, it'll essentially do it in a track change mode, right? Which basically means whatever it is deleting is available for you to accept or reject. Whatever it is, wherever it is not putting in a comment or a track changes. Sorry, I just switched on to the video. Let me actually show you the review. Yeah, this is probably a better graphics, right? So wherever it is making any change, edits, or suggesting anything of that sort, right, you would basically get like red line. You will get track changes done, and then AI will lay down comments onto the document itself for you to know why it made certain changes, right? So there are two advantages of this thing, right? Like, one, a human being is still someone who will have to accept all of these different changes that is done before sending it forward, and these comments will also have to be resolved. So a lawyer basically, so let's say take two scenarios. Like, for a senior lawyer, there is explainability. For a junior lawyer, there is learning. Because as long as it works on your policy documents, the comments are something that's going to help the junior lawyer also understand what is happening, why are we taking certain decisions this way or that way, right? So what we see is that AI systems are going to become both productivity tools, as well as educational tools in some sense, right? For people to be, learning how to use these systems and become better at it, right? Because we are also very focused on sovereign deployments, right? We believe that in justice system, right? Like, say you have a law firm, or whether you're a fund, or you're a large enterprise, or if you're a court for that matter, right? we have a deployment, which is a SaaS application, which when any of you can go, you can sign in and start using it right away. Then for people who are more, more concerned about their data localization, or like where it is stored in some sense, right? There's a bring your own cloud option as well, where any organization who is on any of the cloud service providers, they can provision a tenancy, and that's where the application resides. So none of the data ever leaves the system without the company intending to do so, right? And for organizations who have limitations that they can't be on cloud, right? Those players can also take advantage of A1. We provide on-premise deployment, which basically means that we will put a GPU or server inside your system with the plug to the electricity, and that you can operate, and it will basically provision this application within your premises, right? So you can really air gap it if you are working on really sensitive stuff. So there are mechanisms that we have with respect to the level of data security and privacy that you need. Now, one of the obvious questions that I very often get, right, like what is the LLM we are using, right? One of the advantages, or one of the design choices that we have built, is that we wanted A1 to be LLM agnostic, right? It doesn't matter which LLM it works out of. We definitely have certain preferences with respect to the tasks and the model applicability. But there are tasks which small models are doing. There are tasks which like large models are doing, right? And so there is an ensemble of these models which are basically applied, like purpose fit to a particular task that they are doing in some sense, right? And that's why there are a lot of LLMs that are basically at play here, right? I'm still reading your questions. I'll respond to all of them, I promise. I'll just close this presentation and get it out of the way. So as you can see on A1, we have notifications. So if you are someone who needs to track a lot of regulatory updates, a lot of court cases, notifications helps you. The Supreme Court, RBI, SEBI, tax. We have a lot of case law database that we have not really spoken about, but already integrated into this. It also has access to web, where like there's an entire filtering pipeline to ensure that high quality authentic data is flowing in. Research memo allows you to do research at a very fast pace, right? So for example, you can punch in your queries and let the research memo come, and within a minute you will have a very good starting point to start your discovery and your analysis, right? Auto draft for drafting documents, auto review for reviewing documents. Extraction is a very interesting tool that we have built, which allows for structured data extraction. So one of the things that we saw is, especially in in-house counsel scenario, or people who are dealing with like a lot of like documents where the metadata extraction is one of the highest need things, right? They can just upload these documents, both scanned and digital, onto this. Oh, sorry, you are not able to see this, right? So what you can do is you can upload both like different kind of documents, including PDF and Word documents, etc. And you can upload all the scanned PDFs as well. It does the extraction and everything in the background. And what you essentially get is you get a structured data output of it, right? Now we can integrate it with any of the analytics tool that you are already using, or you can use it as is to basically make certain decisions and certain choices, right? So so extraction basically allows us with this, and masking, which is probably one of the most interesting systems that we have, where it allows you to do PII masking, right? Like with the new data privacy regulations and things like that, right? If you are even storing, physically any of the customer data, right? You will have to start reporting all the incidents of even instances of like where these data points are stored, etc., and all of those things, right? And inevitably, wherever it is not necessary for an organization to store, PII data, right? Or if they are in an M&A and they have to suddenly start like sending, privileged information, but they want certain things redacted. For example, if you are undergoing an M&A scenario and you have to get a due diligence done, right? You would probably have to share some of the privileged information, but in a redacted format, right? These systems basically help you get done those tasks really fast. And interact with this UI, so that you can get your entire redaction exercise done through A1 itself. Now, in terms of like how well the system is, right, there are different methodologies that we have applied to test out the system. we use LLM as judge. We have extensively worked with expert lawyers to give us qualitative feedback with respect to how the system works, what is the quality of responses and things like that. We have an internal benchmark to test out these things. And these kind of things basically allow us to do very, very interesting tasks. So you saw research memo. There's nothing stopping us from connecting your private data and the publicly available case law and regulations data for you to come up with something which is uniquely personalized and crafted to you, right? So the ability for us to be able to combine public and private data both just enhances the search experience for organizations, right? Especially ones who are pressed for time, especially ones who have a very high need for consistency, right? Because we also have all of these things available, which works over a file, right? You don't necessarily, you can apply it in very, very interesting contexts. So for example, there is a asynchronous document processing that is available. So we can provision a email for you where you can just send these requests, or we can have like a org-wide policy where some system administrator basically says that none of my NDA should have these clauses, or all of these things should be checked out, right? And every time someone is basically sending an NDA out for another party to do, right, like they can just send an email to this bot and they can get a reviewed document, right, which will ensure that at least the company policy stuff is agreed upon, or what are the things that you need to negotiate for, right? And this can happen asynchronously. So all the NDAs or term sheets or SSA, SSHA, SPAs, whatever you're getting, right, like say between in the afternoon, all of them can be asynchronously processed, and then you can get an email on your inbox which will have the first reviewed version of all of these things, right, or first drafted version of all of these things. Significantly better position to start working from, right? And yeah, we are grounded on Indian laws when we are sharing. Again, for a better example, right? Like if we are sharing anything related to FEMA or ICDR, right? We know for sure that it is coming from authentic sources, and you don't have to take our word for it. You can also look at it into the tool itself, and you will get all of these documents. So the product is open for anyone to start using, and there are certain things that you can probably start with. So I thought it'll be a good opportunity to talk about that. You can check a particular notification. You can see new circulars and ask it to summarize. Some of the wacky things that you can do is now you can also brainstorm. So you can ask, right, like if say something came up on P2P and DFC kind side of things where regulator has stopped certain things, right? You can now ask our tool, right, like how can technology help both the company and the regulator to use technology so that this problem can be solved and things like that, right? So now the space for ideation in a judgment context or in a new notification context or in a circular context is very, very high, right? Say if you are a in-house counsel for an FMCG and some new circular has come from FSSAI, right? You can start brainstorming right then and there, right? Because you have the data, you have the GenAI integrated with it, and you have a system that allows you to interact with these documents very, very fast. You can ask it to generate compliance report, which is another thing that I have mentioned. I think I mistakenly said like compliance report. Compliance checklist is what I was going for. So let me just correct it, right? Compliance checklist you can generate for a number of different regulators. You can look for very, very specific regulations around very, very specific things. So if you're doing legal research, there is no reason for you to be not using A1. You will just realize the advantages of it once you start doing it, right? You can ask for comparisons because we also have access to web tools, and we curate data a certain way. You can ask it for comparison of certain rules and regulations from different jurisdictions as well, right? With our document suite, you can modify NDAs, SSAs, SHAs, and things like that. You can compare different documents, get a red line very, very fast. You can do clause extraction using our extract tool. You can redact sensitive information from the documents that you're dealing with. And yeah, at this point, this is the end of the slide, not of the conversation. So if you should definitely visit sarvam.ai/legal to learn more about different pricing, different limits that we have on our system. If you want to experience this, you should just go to law.sarvam.ai and you will be able to very quickly create an account and start using all of these different systems. And if you have any questions, we are a very, very proactive team. A bunch of them are also in this call with all of us. Please do write to law@sarvam.ai or saurabh@sarvam.ai with anything that you feel is an important conversation, right? It could be something as simple as, this is how this feature probably should work, and we are very happy to sort of hear and build those things. Or if you have like a very specific need for yourself, we are very happy to engage on that also. If you're someone who is working in legal AI, working on data benchmarking, working on justice issues, working on probably anything that seems adjacent to what are the things that we are doing, we would be very happy to interact, engage, and figure out ways in which we can collaborate, support, etc. So that was the presentation. I'll just get it out of the way so that we can chat. And let me just quickly take a few questions. Yeah. Is the data being processed on device or in the cloud? Because it's a SaaS application, Krunal, the data is being processed on cloud. On SaaS, this is being processed on Sarvam's tenant. So that's answer to your question, Krunal. Can research memo offer memos basis the latest update? It will get it updated as of last 3 hours.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Yeah. Where are the judgments pulled from? Can you upload your own judgments and interact with it? Can you do judgment search on a particular legal issue? The answer to where are the judgments pulled from? They are pulled from the source. We believe that lawyers are sticklers for knowing the authentic source where it is coming from. So it's coming from the court websites or from the regulators' websites where they are uploading information, right? Can you upload your own judgment and interact with it? This is a facility that is not available on A1, but will be made available very soon to all our users. Can you do judgment search on a particular legal issue? Yes, you should absolutely do that, right? If you're dealing with a family matter and you want certain precedents in which, like, mental cruelty was the reason for divorce, right? It will give you a very good understanding of this without you having to go ahead and reference a thicker book, right? Like, it is a very good starting point for you to at least like start using it. So yes, definitely use it for judgment search. The scope, however, should ideally be within Supreme Court realms or the tribunal realms, which is what is covered into the system. We are continuing to work with a lot of partners to expand the database, and hopefully that will significantly ease out your judgment research on legal issues. Then the question is, what are the security measures when any document is updated for redaction? Is the data safe with A1? So the good thing is, if the data is not with A1 in redaction is completely in memory. We don't get to see your documents whatsoever. It is not stored on our system whatsoever. That's a easier thing for us to say, right? Like, there is no storage happening, so there is nothing happening. So all the processing happens in memory. There are legal guarantees around that. None of that data is getting stored, being used for training and all of those things. And then it just gets to you. So once you download this thing, everything is wiped out from our system. What is the capacity in terms of how much data can be analyzed? For example, like, can I extract particular data points from maybe 5,000 judgments? Yes, Ranu, you absolutely can. You will have to get a paid plan from us. But you can obviously do, like, really, and buy 5,000, do 10,000, do 1,000,000, right? Like, we would love to have you use it to that capacity. But yeah, you will have to get a paid plan from us for that volume. Then there is a Shruti Kriti. Will you speak about Sarvam's LLM and small LLMs? Okay, let me come back to this thing. And there's Shivangi Puri. Does the extraction work only for English? Do the documents have to be machine readable? So in extraction, non-machine readable, where you have to do some level of OCR, we already do. Depending on the quality of your document, that might not still get it accurate. Does the extraction work only for English? The honest answer to that question would be, it should be able to work with all the languages. But so far, the needs that we have seen people use it for has largely been in English, right? So people are trying to extract bunch of information. It's from like n number of similar looking English documents. That is the most classic use of extraction. But Shivangi, why don't you go ahead and try it out, and then we would be very happy to support you in case you run into any issue. And then Mohit has, are there any limitations to case types or kind of laws one can search on Sarvam? The limitations are the data limitations. So for example, we do not have all the high courts, judgments yet onto the system, right? But we do have ITAT. So if you're a tax lawyer, you can definitely start using it, right? Like, we have an entire RBI SEBI database on our system. So if you are someone who is dealing with market regulations, you can definitely use our systems. Yeah. Do the modules talk to each other? Can I get a draft output of a research thread I have explored? For example, a petition from the position of law. Let me just say, like, there are things that we are working on that you will soon be able to experience, and we'll be very proud to show it to you around these things. My question is around use cases in low-tech environments. Is it possible to create agents applications using LLM that are cheaper and low research? Shruti, the answer to the question is yes. The core of the company is to build population scale deployments, and by that definition, we have to be very, very cost effective. So yeah, there are ways to do that. How can we ensure that judgments are the correct ones? Because judgments can be overruled. How do you guys manage that? If yes, again, Hansini, right? Like there are agents who basically read all of these judgments. They make certain kind of decisions guided by how we have baked it into it, right? The honest answer to this question is like, why don't you try it out and let us know if you have found any discrepancy in those scenarios, right? How classically people have tried to solve for it is by, so what you're doing is you would be probably doing a judgment parsing, then you are linking different cases based on the named entities, and then you are trying to classify whether someone has overruled this or not overruled this, right? And there are very established benchmarks and data sets available in the US jurisdiction to test out whether two systems do this citation accuracy and overruling of things kind of a scenario very, very well. We don't find it in India as much, right? So we have basically worked on building our agent with all the guardrails around looking at all of these different indicators. So imagine how a lawyer would have done it when all of these case law databases with these graph exploration and everything did not exist. So that's how the agents basically like verify information, whether something is overruled or not overruled. And why overruled or not overruled, right? Like the classic problem of regulation is that you will have multiple documents with similar data. One will have old data, one will have new data, and somewhere it is probably not even written that this goes by this and that kind of a scenario. So there's a lot of different variations, and because we are not dealing with one single variation kind of a thing, the agent is basically designed to take all of these different variations and be semi-autonomous in their pursuit. So that's what I would say. What are the sources of legal updates? As I said, these are the regulators and the courts websites. I want to clarify, the research memo function doesn't refer to High Court or District Court. Shivangi, that is correct. And what is the repository from the judgments are fetched? The repositories are own, which we have created by going and gathering a lot of data, both private data as well as public data licensed onto our system. Harleen, I just showed a slide where I was mentioning how accurate it is. I can probably just quickly switch to this. Yeah. So we rank fairly well, compared to pure LLM chatbots and the web search products, to ensure that you do not get any unverified, unauthentic, uncited, unreliable information. And this is what the results are. We will be publishing a blog on this soon, which will have like more technical details on it, which you can refer. Bhargavi is asking, is feature extraction on a large set of court orders fed into the system possible? Yes, Bhargavi, totally possible. We in fact built it so that 20,000 SEBI orders you could extract all of this information from and then can do some research. How well would it do in case of a particular industry, say? Krunal, I think you should just try it out. There's a lot of data that is already existing. Questions around how well it does something is something that you will have to test out and say. We have benchmarks to believe that it does a very fantastic job of it, but you will have to find out for yourself. If one wants to look at all the, why don't we do one thing? Why don't we switch to like people asking questions over audio? Otherwise, there will be a lot of asynchronous questioning on the chat.
Yeah, maybe folks could just raise their hands and I could just moderate that. Shruti, do you want to just unmute and ask your question out loud so that everybody else can also just hear it once?
Yeah. Hi, everyone. So my question was that in case one is researching for a particular criminal case and they want to see all the documents, like all court documents or court orders that have come out of that particular case. Can we do that kind of research on Sarvam? Of course, once I mentioned that once you have high court data and tribunal or district court data, can one do something like that?
The answer to that question is yes. I mean, your question is more around where is the AI capability today and can it perform this particular task? And the answer to that question is yes. once we integrate all of this data onto the system, agent will be able to do those kind of things.
Shivangi, do you want to just ask your question?
Yeah, I'm just asking whether you're thinking of like expanding your judgment database to include high court and district court judgments, because I think that would be fantastic and would be because especially when you do a research, you would want to look at what the high courts are also saying, not just what the Supreme Court are saying. So like it would be half the answer if we only get what Supreme Court is saying about a particular issue. So if you are thinking of including it, that'd be fantastic.
We are thinking about including it. The mechanisms of doing that is something that that we will figure out. But here's another reality about the data quality, right? Like it's significantly easier to source Supreme Court data, to be very honest, right? It's extremely hard to get access to district court, right? And then high court is somewhere in between, right? Depending on which high court you're talking about. Are you talking about Delhi, Bombay, or which one, right? So we are trying to navigate through all of these different challenges in terms of what coverage we can have. Yeah, we would do our best to get all of these systems. If there are people who already have this data, we also have something where we allow people, we build systems that allows people who are sitting on a lot of data to very securely and privately share their data with the GenAI providers with guarantees around no copying, nothing of that sort, right? So all of those guarantees are there, but then that just democratizes access to some of these databases, right? So just because we have a quality of data issue in India with respect to these judgments and everything, I think we will just figure out a way in which we can navigate and integrate it as soon as possible. But that is definitely in the plans.
Josefa?
Hi. I just wanted to ask that how is this system of legal research different from that of uh, RAG system, RAG pipeline, which is integrated with a huge legal database?
Yeah. So it's very, very different. Retrieval augmented generation basically means that you are getting some data to an LLM to, either summarize, extract or do some task with it, right? But usually how a RAG is thought of is, single step stuff. So you are retrieving some information from a database, you are sending it to an LLM, you're getting a response and you're passing it to a user, right? Now imagine a database which has a lot of similar looking documents, right? How much will you retrieve, right? And if they have contradictory information, how will you ensure that those contradictions are resolved before a user is sent, right? There are limitations with respect to what auto-regressive models can do in these scenarios, right? So the way we have went about building it, and that's why I did not say RAG, right? Like there's actually a research agent who is sitting there, which is, it's not a person, but like this research agent is not RAG. This research agent is a semi-autonomous piece of software which goes, makes decisions, does research, takes notes. It actually mimics how a person thinks when they are researching about a particular information. It maintains context across. Those are the kind of things that we do. So it is not a RAG.
Also, I wanted to know uh, if Sarvam is coming up with means they are integrating with huge databases. For example, All India Reporter or India Kanun, they have a huge repository of all the judgments. So it may come as a handy to them in order to get all the judgments, and from they have also the judgments from the various high courts, Supreme Courts, tribunals.
Yeah, I mean, whenever some of these things materialize, we will definitely make it a public news.
Thank you.
Vaibhav?
Hi, this is Vaibhav. My quick question, in addition to, since mentioned this is not a RAG pipeline it has a semi-autonomous software which acts as an agent, can I look for outcomes in judgments basis the facts of my case? Is that a possibility?
Yeah, Vaibhav. I mean, you can do a lot of amazing wacky stuff with this, right? Like just go ahead and try it. So anyone who has a question which starts with, can I do this on research, right? The answer most likely is going to be yes. And that's why you should just go ahead and try it out, right? Like that's the advantage of building these flexible systems, right? Just the limit of things that you can do with this is like very, very wide. But at the end of the day, right? Like this is something that I was telling someone some time back only, right? Like it's like driving a car. And if you're going to like really push it to its limit, you should have probably like driven it a little further, because then you will know where that limit lies, right? So test it out, and you experience it for yourself. I think that's going to be the truth in some sense.
Thanks, Saurabh.
Thank you, Saurabh. Any other questions? Yeah, Lakshya.
Hi, Saurabh. Thanks for the brilliant talk. One question in terms of how you measure how well the system is performing, right? You said that there are legal experts who do the testing. On your blog, will you be talking more about it in terms of how this testing is done, given that you'll have competitor products also coming out and there are already these public chatbots? Can you just talk a bit about that? Yeah.
Yeah, we will definitely like share like how we have gone about doing our testing. What level of details we are able to share outside is going to be a question of something that our company policies will have to decide. But the other part of the scenario really is that the reason why we are doing benchmarks ourselves is like because there are not a lot of public benchmarks available in the legal space in India, right? So the answer to your question is we have gone about doing very extensive testing with expert lawyers. And what we have at least like learned is that bunch of these things are not like generating a test data set and then just making it work from there, right? There are a lot of like qualitative nuances that one has to look for, and that can only be achieved when you have achieved some sort of a fusion within a team, right? So unless and until a lawyer really understands, right, like how these systems are working, right, it will be very, very hard for them to even point out, right, like what is right, why is it working, why is it not working, and those kind of scenarios. Those are some of the things that we may not share on the blog, right? But I think the answer really is that we will definitely share like how we have done the testing. You have seen the chart, that we do really well on a bunch of these benchmarks. But the honest truth that's going to come whether something is useful or not is when the lawyers basically start using it and seeing the benefits. By that logic, like we have a lot of evidence to say that this works pretty well because a lot of people have actually experienced, tested it out and things like that. But they will not be just like a quantitative number that you can summarize it within. Which is one of the reasons why you would see, right? Like these are like ratings. These are not like 97% benchmark pe aa gaya, 80% benchmark pe aa gaya, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Just a follow-up question to that. Do you also have in-house lawyers who are doing this testing, training?
Do we have in-house lawyers? The answer is no. We are the legal team of Sarvam in some sense. We do work with a lot of lawyers. So we do get them on, certain assignments, certain tasks, and then they help us out with that. But yeah, we don't have lawyers on our roll.
Thank you, Saurabh. Himansh?
Hi, Saurabh. So I had a very simple question on basically the user interface. So what I've realized with interacting with a lot of GenAI tools is that a chat scenario is very how do I put it? Like it is rarer for lawyers from all walks of life to interact with. So when it comes to a search engine, a search bar, it has more utility because people have gotten used to it over say 10, 15 years and how they process data that comes from it. Whereas chatbot scenario or say voice to text is a great thing that Sarvam does. So on the user interface level, is it something unique or discussions that you all have had to break this barrier? See, corporate lawyers will get it, will use it. We know that. But majority of lawyers in India, from my analysis, comes from different walks of life. So how do we think of them using this?
I guess that is going to be a journey. Only market will tell us what is fitting well with the users in some sense, right? Like sometimes there is no, we can debate, we can have our own opinions about it, but the actual truth will only be arrived at that. In terms of what are the conversations that we have had around UI, right? Like, so I think the team was very opinionated on UI generally in life in terms of like how we want to sort of like go about building it. And this conversation on chat versus a search, right, are things that we have also debated very deeply inside, right? A lot of things that we are doing here comes from the evidence of like being testing very continuously with a lot of lawyers, right? So I guess like what sits well with the user is something that you have to test out and get done. And to be very honest, right, people don't have the drafting sort of experience that we have, right? Like you would either have like a Microsoft Word plugin where you are doing some stuff, or you are just using Claude or ChatGPT to get something written, then you copy and paste it somewhere, then you start fixing formatting, right? That's the GenAI document editing sort of like interface is, right? And if you see, right, like we are like what 3 steps: put your documents, give instruction, get done, boom, right? We have basically built it for minimum friction for now, because what we are doing is we are also trying to understand the user behavior.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Saurabh. We have 2 minutes and maybe time for just one last question if anybody wants to go. Okay, if not, maybe I can just ask a last question. Generally, Saurabh was curious that, you mentioned about these tools which need a lot of context. Is there even some anecdotal strategies as to how we can go about the prompting?
Prompting is a very interesting question, which I don't think anyone has a one good universal answer to. I guess the question really is that you need fuel for your AI systems, right? Like case law database, for example, is that kind of a fuel, right? Then you need some more different kind of energy so that you're able to steer the vehicle enough, right? Like, and those steerings can be both like software components as well as prompts to help you arrive at a certain outcome in some sense, right? How they are they are not independent pieces that you can go build independently and just assemble it and then goes in, right? Like one of the things that people underestimate drastically in case of like AI system or software system building process is just it's a work of craftsmanship, right? Like you have to look at a lot of these variables which are not necessarily spoken about, but they interact with each other, and those interactions you will have to be in control of. For example, a system RAG, simple RAG with whatever quality prompt you want to give it, right? You try it, it'll not work, right? And then the question basically becomes: is your approach wrong? Is it your prompt wrong? And those questions will come in, right? And only the evidence is what is going to help you decipher whether you should be working on your, fixing your prompt, or whether you should be using another approach to building what you are building, right? But those are very, very what you are building. I don't think there is a one generic, one size fits all kind of a thing. And that's why like products are going to be very integrated, innate experiences.
Understood. Thanks a lot. We are on time, but would you want to take the last question from Vaibhav?
Yeah, sure.
Vaibhav, go for it.
Thanks, Saurabh. 2 questions. Single question, 2 parts. Part 1, you mentioned that you guys are model like the LLM agnostic, right? There are some parts which are being done by smaller models, some by larger models. So 1, how is that selection made? Sub question 2 is how do you measure the efficacy of a model, especially in case of a private deployment, right? Like, are you how do you measure that the outcome of that model or processing of that model right now is on track or is satisfactory?
Yeah. One, if you are doing on-prem deployment, most likely the person has given you enough money that they are the ones who are going to tell you that it is not working. And methodical collection of data itself becomes a problem in on-premise deployment. So there is no real way in which you can prove your efficacy after on-premise deployment. You have to prove it before you have done the deployment itself, which is what I was showing you, right? Like testing out on all of these systems, right? For public data, it's not a problem. Most likely what you're talking about is you're talking about drafting, and you're talking about like redaction and extraction tools which work on private data, right? We have worked extensively on ensuring that the methodology is correct, and that's why we are confident that this will work very, very well even in an on-premise deployment solution. Having said that, bunch of these things are very, very new, not to us, but to the entire world for that matter, right? And these technologies will mature over a period of time, and your concerns around accuracy is going to follow the same loss curve, right? Like the closer we are, more accurate, more or less chances of it being stochastic in n number of different things. But other than that, what we do is we also build a lot of guardrails. So for example, almost all of our systems are designed to not give you a response if the information is not present there, right? We do it in very, very different ways, not just by prompting, as I was explaining right now. There are more sophisticated techniques that we are applying onto it. And those basically help us stay away from problem causing behaviors of the agent, right? So those are some of the ways in which we do that. Vaibhav. I don't know if it answers your question.
No, it does in a bit. So just for me to completely understand it, do you think then in that case, private deployments could be a worthy challenge for a legal tech entrepreneur to solve for?
I don't know if a generalized statement can be made right now. I think that it's a truth-seeking exercise. You have to just go and get the evidence and then figure it out.
Sure.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody, for joining in, and thanks a lot, Saurabh. So Saurabh has also shared his details on the chat, and we'll also be sending you an email with the recording and other details if you want to write to him directly. And yeah, have a great weekend ahead. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Saurabh. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.